This is probably the craziest recipe I've ever made on camera. Ever heard of a Christmas Yule Log? It's absolutely stunning, has a bunch of cool sugar garnishes, but I don't want to lie to you, it's a beast to make. I'm confident though, you can pull this off. We've got a lot to do. Sound good? Let's bake.
We're going to start off by making our roll cake. So I've got a sifter in a large bowl. We are going to add in some unsweetened cocoa powder, followed up by adding in some all-purpose flour. You have to use all-purpose flour. If you don't in this recipe and you decide to change it, it's going to alter everything else. Next, add in some baking powder. It's going to help leaven and rise our cake. And then simply sift until all those ingredients are through our sifter. Now, at this point, we're going to add in some sugar for sweetness, some oil. I like to use veg oil. You could use canola or any other neutral flavored oil. Next, I've got some vanilla extract. We're going to hit it with a little bit of salt. And then I've got 6 large eggs. They can be cold or at room temperature, does not matter. Now, using a whisk, you need to vigorously whisk this until it is completely combined and smooth. Now, once it is to this consistency, we are going over to a cookie sheet tray lined with parchment paper. Scrape all of that goodness out of the bowl onto that sheet tray. Now, using an offset spatula or even just the other rubber spatula you were using, just spread it all over that cookie sheet tray. I try not to go end to end. I try to stay on the parchment paper because it does need to release from the pan when we flip it over. Okay, this looks perfect. We're now heading over to the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to cook for in between 14 and 16 minutes. This is great timing because we can prep up our kitchen towel. Make sure you have a large, clean kitchen towel. And what we are going to do is sift or sprinkle on some cocoa powder all over the kitchen towel. What this is going to do is to make sure that our roll cake does not stick to the towel after rolling it up. Once the cake is finished, we're just going to take it out, have a look. It is nice and warm, so you have to do this quickly. If it is touching the pan outside of the parchment paper, just take a little butter knife and run it along that edge there. Now, we need to invert it right onto that kitchen towel. So be careful. It is hot. Gently fold it over. You don't want to break anything or crack anything. And then immediately remove the parchment paper. Now, starting at the bottom end, we want to roll this cake up in the kitchen towel that's been sprinkled with cocoa powder. Be so careful with this. We want to let it cool to room temperature, which takes about 2 to 2.5 hours. Great, because we've got a lot of other stuff to do. Let's make that filling. In a stand mixer with the whisk attachment, we're going to add in some cold, heavy whipping cream, followed up with some powdered sugar. It does not need to be sifted because it's going to get beat up pretty good in this stand mixer. Next, I'm going to add some cocoa powder. Again, no need to sift. Now, when you're doing this, though, start off on low speed or else that powdered sugar and cocoa powder is going to go everywhere. Once it is just mixed in, you can crank the heat up to high speed. We want to get this to about medium peaks. Once it is to this consistency, we're going to add in some mascarpone cheese. This is going to help thicken it up, stabilize it, and makes it extra delicious. Now we whip it on high speed again until stiff peaks are formed, which takes an additional 2 or 3 minutes. And for a secret weapon, I like to add in a little bit of Bailey's Irish cream. You could do Kahlua as well if you want. Now let's take a look, make sure the peaks are nice and stiff, and whenever it's stuck to the whisk like this, the peaks are stiff and we are good to go. So just bang off that filling on the whisk into the bowl. We're going to set it to the side of the refrigerator until it's time to use it.
Do everything in your power not to eat that filling. It is so dang good. You should definitely try it. The roll is very similar to my pumpkin roll, almost the exact same process. Okay, now what we're going to do is make the ganache. Here we go.
Ganache is just a fun word to say. So we're going to add a medium-sized pot, half filled with water, onto a cooktop over low heat. While it is heating up, we're going back over to the cutting board. I've got some chocolate bars. This is semi-sweet chocolate, which comes in at about 56% cocoa. This is great. This is going to work. If you only have chips, make sure they are high quality chocolate chips. Now add them to a heat safe bowl along with some heavy whipping cream. Now we're going to take that bowl right over. Let's have a look. Yep, we are simmering. This is perfect. Add the bowl over top. Now use a rubber spatula because we want to stir it the entire time. We don't want the chocolate to burn to the bottom of a bowl. We're in a double boiler, so that most likely wouldn't even happen, but just to make sure things are moving around. Keep scraping the sides. Make sure everything is completely melted and smooth, just like this. Now take it off of the double boiler. We're just going to set it on the countertop, give it a few extra stirs, and then what I like to do is throw a towel over it and wait for it to harden up, which takes about 60 to 90 minutes.
So at this point, you have everything you need to make this Yule log. You just need to wait a little bit longer. Make sure your ganache thickens up a bit. You also need that roll cake to finish cooling, then stuffing it up and rolling it. So here we go. We've got some time. What I'm going to do is make some really cool garnishes. These are completely optional, but I'm telling you right now, it will take this over the top aesthetically. It's beautiful. We're going to make some sugared cranberries and rosemary, and then some little cool mushroom meringues. Here we go.
In a clean bowl of a stand mixer with the whisk attachment, we are going to add in some egg whites and turn the speed to low. Next, we're going to immediately add in some cream of tartar, which is going to help stabilize the egg whites. Do not skip out on this process. Now, what we want to do is get it to soft peaks. Now, if you have no idea what that would look like, let's stop it and then have a look. See how the peak immediately folds over? Yep, those are soft. So let's put the stand mixer back down and add in our sugar. Now, it's best to use caster sugar or fine sugar. If you don't have access to that, just add it to a food processor and process for about 1 minute. It will break it up to nice small little sugar particles. Now, once we add it in there, make sure the speed is on medium to high. We are looking for stiff peaks. Now here, take a look at this. This is absolutely a perfect example of stiff peaks. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is add it to a piping bag, but first we need a 1/2 inch round tip. This is the Wilton 1A. We are going to add it to a piping bag. Make sure the end is, of course, cut off there. And then start scooping in some of a meringue right into that piping bag. Now push everything down, squeeze the top to force it, and we're going to make little mushroom caps. So you do this by squeezing in a round circular motion. Try not to have too much on the top. If you see a little spike there, just press it down with a spoon or even your finger. These are going to act again as our mushroom caps. Just tap it off with your finger. You'll be good to go. Once those are finished, we're going to reload the bag, and then we're going to do the stems. Squeeze a little bit and pull straight up, and after about 1 inch of it standing up, sort of loosen your grip and pull up to sort of taper off just like this. Now, we are going in the oven at 250 degrees. It's going to take about 45 minutes. If you wanted them to be a little browner, you could do it at 275. Once they are finished, let's take them out. They take about 15 to 20 minutes for them to dry out even more at room temperature. But in the meantime, what we want to do is melt some chocolate. So I've got a bowl of semi-sweet chocolate chips. We're going to add them to the microwave on 1 minute. Yes, I know it. You believe it? I'm in the microwave. After 1 minute, take the chocolate chips out. They'll start to melt. Give them a stir. Looks just like this. We add it back to the microwave for another 30 seconds. In case it's not completely melted at that point, you do it in 30-second bursts with mixing in between. But after that first 30-second burst, it is perfectly melted. Now set it to the side. Let's go back over to our mushroom caps. They're nice and dried out. Using a skewer, what we want to do is create a small hole in the bottom. This is where the stem is going to fit in. So don't push all the way through. Be very, very gentle. This is perfect. Set them to the side and repeat until they're all done. Now, grab that chocolate. Use a pastry brush. What we want to do is sort of create the gills. So spread the chocolate evenly all around the bottom. Try not to get it around the outside and the top. You don't want that chocolate to be around there. We want a perfect, nice, white little mushroom. Now all of you do is set it right on top of the stem. Boom, you've got a mushroom meringue. How awesome is this? Now, for a little dirt look, so to speak, we're going to sprinkle on a little bit of cocoa powder. It gives it that nice, natural, organic look.
These mushroom meringues are so cool. At this point, before we get to the sugared cranberries and rosemary, my cake is done cooling. What we want to do is stuff it up with the filling and get it in the refrigerator so that it can tighten up and harden up even more, so it makes it very easy to slice. Here is how we do that.
Let's have a look at our cake. Be so gentle when doing this and unrolling it. Just like I would tell my daughter when she was really young. Gentle hands, gentle hands. Be careful and unroll it until it is completely unrolled, because we need to stuff it up with our filling.
Okay, really quickly before we put this filling in, do not be discouraged if your cake has cracked somewhere. After we put the filling in and roll it up, we're going to cover it in ganache. No one's going to know. Do not worry, it's going to be totally cool. Here we go.
Add several large dollops of our chocolate filling all throughout the center, and use an offset spatula or even a rubber spatula, whatever you have. Evenly spread it around all over the top, just like this. Once it is in there, you have to, again, be so gentle. Roll this thing up completely until it is at the very end. Now what we do is transfer it to a little bit of plastic wrap. We're going to roll it up nice and tight. We want our cake to harden up a little bit. So what we want to do after it is rolled up, we're going to place it in the refrigerator to make sure it tightens up.
So we've got about 30 to 45 minutes. This is plenty of time to get going on our sugar toppings. Here we go.
In a small size sauce pot, we're going to make a simple syrup. So add in some water, followed up with some sugar. We're only going to turn the heat to medium. We don't want this to boil. Make sure it does not boil. We just want the sugar to be dissolved. This takes about 5 to 10 minutes. At this point, remove it from the cooktop. Now I've got some rosemary sprigs here. We want to dip it in there, move it around, make sure they are completely coated. Now set them to the side on a sheet tray lined with parchment paper. After about 20 minutes, they're going to get really sticky. While those are waiting, let's add the cranberries to that pot. That same pot, totally fine to reuse that simple syrup. Completely coat them, move them around all over the place. Using a slotted spoon, take them out, add them to a sheet tray lined with parchment paper, and be sure to spread them out. Make sure they're not touching each other, or else that little part that was touching each other is not going to get coated in sugar. Again, let this sit for about 20 minutes. At that time, let's go back to our rosemary. It's been about 20 minutes. We are going to coat them in a bowl of sugar. It's going to give this really, really cool frosted look. Now, it takes about another 20 minutes for these to dry out, but they will absolutely dry out over longer periods of time. Same thing with the cranberries. Do it in batches. Completely coat them in the sugar on all sides. Set them to the side on a cookie sheet tray lined with parchment paper. And these are nice little fun snacks too. Takes the bitterness away from cranberries. Set them to the side. Now, it's been the perfect amount of time. Our roll cake is chilled. We've got lots of fun garnishes. Let's have a look and take this out. Looks excellent. What we do want to do is cut it at an angle about 5 or 6 inches down, just like this. What we're doing is we're creating that little end piece to our log. Now, you're not done yet, okay? Because we want to make sure it's nice and angled. We're going to cut against the other side of the angle with that little piece that we sliced off at the end. Now, we want to add it to the platter that we are going to serve it up on. So place the larger chunk here, and then the smaller little piece, we're going to angle it just like that on the side. Now, to make sure this is sticking to the larger piece, let's grab that ganache. It's been about 90 minutes. It's nice and firmed up. Look at that. That is so good. Try not to eat all the ganache. It's so good. Now stick it to the bigger piece. And now what we do is ice the top of this on all sides. You can use a spoon, a spatula. Got a special little cake spatula here. Evenly spread it on all sides, all over the top. It may be a little bit hard because there's cocoa powder on top, but don't worry, it will spread. And then you want to smooth it out as best you can. Do not worry if it's not perfectly smooth. This is supposed to resemble bark on a tree. Now grab a fork and just make little swiggle lines. Don't go all the way through. We don't want to go through to the cake. Stay pretty shallow into that ganache icing and do it all over on all sides, and it will absolutely start looking like perfect tree bark.
Even as fancy as this cake is going to be, it is still about fundamental basics. We made a simple roll cake, a simple filling. We made ganache, super fundamental in the baking world. But now what we are going to do is plate this up. You can have so much fun doing this. Here is how I'm going to do it.
I like to add these all over the place, including the platter, but I especially like to add them in the cracks and the crevices to sort of hide them, but also make sure it is purposeful. So add plenty of sugared rosemary, some mushrooms, some sugared cranberries all over even again on the plate. You can finish it off by sprinkling on some chopped macadamias or hazelnuts, super good. And oh my gosh, you've got seriously the most amazing dessert at Christmas that anyone is ever going to see. Be proud of yourself. Let's get in this.